Joel Klatt is, I've never been a teacher, but I do think I would have been extraordinary in these mentorship moments. And this Klatt, get out here. It's time once again for the classroom.
What's up?
How are you
doing?
I am doing great, my friend. How
I
are you
am
doing?
so thrilled to be invited to Trojan Talk. No longer the herd, right? It's just Trojan Talk.
You know,
Is that
it's
what
funny.
we're doing?
It's funny. When I talk about Saban for a decade, nobody blanches. Nobody cares.
Well,
I
that's
talk-
because he won the national championship every year for a decade.
Even before he did, I'm like, what? Watch, this is what's going to happen.
Okay.
I talk Notre Dame all the time. The minute
Only to bash them. It's a Midwest school, too rigorous academically. It snows there. Why would you? I remember.
I talk about Lincoln Riley, who's pretty good, for 5 minutes, the world implodes.
Well, he hasn't won a playoff game.
Oh, yeah. He won 11 games a year.
I listen. I am a Lincoln supporter, not quite to the level you are, but I'm excited for USC. I think that they've got a great team, and I'm the one. By the way, we both take arrows on this because I'm the one that have sat here on this show and said I think at some point in this first season of his, they'll be ranked inside the top 10. I don't think they're going to finish there, but at some point in this season, I think they're going to be ranked inside the top 10.
So they have – I don't think they have the capability to beat Notre Dame right now. I don't think they have –
Notre Dame's too tough at the line of scrimmage for them right now.
And I think UCLA is –
they're better than people think.
Way better.
Yeah.
Like UCLA is a 9-10 win team potentially. So I think they're going to go 9-3. I think Utah beats them. UCLA beats them. Notre Dame kind of pushes them around even at the Coliseum. Is that realistic?
Yeah, I think that's completely realistic. Now, they're not where they need to be on defense yet. They're not where they need to be on the line of scrimmage yet, but I think that that's going to come. And the recruiting will get to a point where they're not going to need this influx of transfers like they're going to on this first season. But obviously, with the news for Jordan Addison, and they got the Mario Williams, the wide receiver from Oklahoma. They've got obviously Caleb. They are loaded offensively, and we know one thing about Lincoln Riley: it doesn't matter really how his defense plays; he'll find a way to have success, and he's done that for a number of years. He did it with some really poor defenses at Oklahoma.
Yes,
and this is not a conference that's nearly as deep or as good as what those Big 12 conferences were over the last 4 and 5 and 6 years. So there's no reason to believe that USC is not going to be at least near the top of the Pac-12. No reason not to believe that.
All right, so the other one, there's a big game. I can't wait for it. Texas and Alabama.
Yes.
Now, I'm a Sark fan, but they're 5-7. The recruiting the last 2 years has been very good. A lot of those kids just didn't play because they're 18 years old. So now you've got a Texas team. Some of these kids now, these 5-star kids are going to play. They have the best running back in the country.
Yep.
Can they compete with Alabama? I don't think they're beating them. Can they compete with them?
I'm not quite sure. Alabama is going to be so good, and where they're going to be dominant is the pass rush.
Well,
yes, they have Bryce Young, and they'll be good on offense.
They have the best defensive player, the edge kid.
That Will Anderson.
Yeah,
and he could be a top pick. He'll probably be the first pick. Non-quarterback pick in next year's draft.
Yeah.
And obviously C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young will be involved in that whole quarterback conversation. But I went down to spring ball at Alabama, and I was thoroughly impressed with not only Bryce Young, but just the entire defensive front seven. I think is going to be so good and so dominant. They're going to be the number one team in the country. Last year, I felt like they overachieved to get to the national championship game, to get to where they went. It was really about Bryce and what he was able to do, and he carried them to that national championship game. They ultimately get beat by Georgia, but Nick's better team is coming back this year. And this year, they're going to be a better team at the line of scrimmage. They're going to be a better defense, and in particular, that pass rush. So this is going to be a really tough one for Texas. Keep in mind, though, Texas is much better this year. They've recruited much better. They've done a good job in the transfer portal, and we'll see who plays quarterback for them. I think that it might be Quinn Ewers, but remember, he doesn't have a transfer left. So Sarkisian's got this kind of back pocket where it's like, does he have to play him right away? Well, not really, because he can't go anywhere. Which is that's kind of a nice little nugget for Steve Sarkisian.
Okay, so Saban and Jimbo Fisher out there.
Oh, how about that?
Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
I mean, they fought worse than we do.
Yeah,
it was like real. Like ours is tongue in cheek, but man.
So listen, I like Saban, but this whole thing concerned about parity. Oh, give me a break. Yeah, that's why you play Citadel every 15 minutes. Listen, I think I said this is what fear looks like. When powerful people start to lose the ability to control players' transferability or the money coming in, I think he's fearful of Texas money. I think he's fearful of Jimbo and Sark are great recruiters. It's going to be harder to invade that state and pull guys over. And there's also big oil money in Texas. Alabama's the 27th biggest economy in America. Texas is a number 2 economy, and he's going to get outbid if it just comes down to NIL. That's how it lands for me.
You don't go a long way in this business criticizing guys that have won national championships, and in particular, a guy who I have pounded the table as Nick Saban is the best coach in the history of this sport.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think he's better than the Bear. Last week was embarrassing for both of them.
Yeah.
I thought maybe more so from Nick, and he's tried to clean it up. And I know, he went on Sirius XM and he tried to clean it up, but it was embarrassing. And it reminded me, I've got 3 little boys, 10, 8, and 5. And when we're outside and we're playing wiffle ball, and there's not a structure of rules there for the wiffle ball game, guess what? It devolves into whining and name-calling and pointing and just fighting, right? And it's petulant fighting because they don't really know what's going on. And then you have to, as the parent, set the guardrails for the game. What are the rules of the game? Or else it's just going to devolve into this mess of name-calling and petulant fighting. Well, what we just saw, folks, was 2 adults in the room that have had success at the highest level, that have had a friendship, by the way, in previous years, devolve into petulant fighting because there's no guardrails of rules around what is now the current state of college football. The NCAA abdicated their responsibility of governance over this sport, and it has put the entire sport and every program in a really tough position. And they could have done something surrounding NIL years ago. And I had conversations with people. I remember being in Indianapolis for the Combine, probably 6 years ago, Colin. And I went to one of the rules committees, NCAA is in Indianapolis, and I went to one of the rules committee. It was just on-field rules committee, but the discussion surrounding overarching rules was obviously there. And I had the discussion with a guy that I'm going to say will remain nameless at this point. And I told him then, I was like, listen, you guys can take 2 or 3 steps that you don't want to right now in terms of NIL, name, image, and likeness, or you will be forced to take 10 steps that you're unprepared for in the years to come. And that's exactly what happened because they abdicated their responsibility to govern.
Yeah.
They
created, not proactive.
And they created a vacuum. And that vacuum then has allowed this environment where we've got 2 guys, Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban, who can't control everything, so they lash out. And then one lashed out at the other, and the other one got, the vitriol coming back, and then it got personal. And it's because there was a vacuum of leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. And I know that it's in vogue to just rip on the NCAA, but that's what happens. That's what happens when you abdicate your responsibility to govern. You create a leadership vacuum. And at some point, we're going to have to get back to the guardrails of what rules are in place. I know this is a long answer, but think about this. Everyone says, and you may have said it too, and I fall guilty of this as well. Everyone has said there's no rules around NIL. That's garbage. That's a falsity. That is wrong. Why? Because the things that are coming around NIL that are making it difficult are things like tampering, things like inducements, those main inducements, tampering inducements, those are things that there are rules around. There are rules around boosters and defining boosters.
Yes, there are.
So why not just enforce the rules that are on the books at this point? Because the bastardization of NIL has taken place. It's now an inducement and not a reward. So now a kid busts his butt. He goes and signs a scholarship, and he busts his butt and becomes a starter, and he creates a little bit of name, image, and likeness for himself. He creates a little name equity for himself. Yeah. And guess what? He's not going to get a dime. Why? Because the collective at that school is going to be more motivated to give a player in the form of an inducement money to get them under the roof. Well, now we're just going to erode the chemistry of locker rooms. So the fact remains that the adults have failed the industry. The NCAA has failed the industry on an epic level. And the void in leadership right now is cavernous. And when you have a void in leadership, when you have a void in guardrails, it divulges into my 10, 8, and 6-year-old, 5-year-old outside playing wiffle ball, name calling, bickering, and finger pointing because they don't have any rules.
I've told you for years your kids need guardrails.
Well, I try to present them. I'm thankful for guys like you. I come on here and you give me some good defined guardrails in my life, my professional life.
Weeds doing stuff.
I'm flying all over you enjoy. You're kind of like I sit here and see I'm lower than both of you.
That's
you
exactly
guys sit
right.
on high, right, Joy?
It's
and
the
you're
Game of Thrones.
like professional
It's
guardrails.
strategic.
This is it.
Yeah, this is it.
This is kind of my
Game of Thrones.
It's like psychology. It's like going to my. You guys are my psychiatrists. I never really put it together.
Yeah, you're down there. You
That's
listen
right.
to your mentor.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.